screen. They're going to be talking about Title II funds and Children's Justice Act.
Thank you, Jason. I will share my screen. I am Adonica McAllister. We're just going to introduce ourselves. And like I said earlier, I supervise our juvenile justice team as well as our crime victim services team. If the rest of my team could introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Lockley. I'm a juvenile justice planner and CJA coordinator with the Governor's Crime Commission.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wayne Stiles, a grant planner and grants manager with the Juvenile Justice Planning Team. Thank you.
Thanks, all. So we are going to talk about the two funding sources that we administer. But first, we'd like to talk a little bit about our Juvenile Justice Planning Committee and our two subcommittees. Our Juvenile Justice Planning Committee has a mission to provide resources for youth who are at risk of becoming delinquent due to various factors. And the resources provide services for youth who are delinquent, undisciplined, or involved in the juvenile court process from intake through aftercare. We have two subcommittees. They include our Racial and Ethnic Disparities Subcommittee, which aims to develop strategies to reduce minority overrepresentation in the juvenile justice system, as well as our Children's Justice Act Task Force. And the CJA Task Force supports the improvement and strengthening of the front end intake and investigative pieces of the child abuse and neglect systems. So we administer two funding sources. We used to refer to Title II as juvenile justice, but our Title II juvenile justice funds. And these are from the Department of Justice, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and our Children's Justice Act funds. And those are administered through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration for Children and Families, or the Children's Bureau. All projects have required reports, and we like to touch on this first before we get into the funding sources, just because we've implemented some new strategies for seeing performance for our subrecipients. The reports are required to be submitted by the deadlines, and they should include quantitative information wherever possible. So this will connect when we start talking about our funding sources, but the purpose of those performance reports are so that we can, once the GCC receives the data, we report those to our federal partners, and that helps inform our national budget. So again, all projects by the GCC are required to provide a progress report as well as some performance. And so under our funding sources, the Children's Justice Act and Juvenile Justice funding sources submit a mid-year and a final report. And extensions to the award period may require additional reporting. And so we want to go over this first just because we're seeking specific information, and the funding sources in your application should speak directly to exactly what we're looking for.
So here you'll have access to the performance reports. You'll find all reporting forms under the grant form section on the GCC website. Just select the correct report link for your award type, and before you hit submit, make sure to check the box to email yourself a copy. That email version is your official record. And once that's done, you can upload your completed form to your project in EBS. So as of October 1st, new performance measures apply to all CJA projects. Open projects will now submit their performance reports each year by October 30th, and the questions you'll see will match your project's funding priority, A, B, or C, which you can find right on your agreement in EBS. And you'll notice a few new questions also. These are designed to capture your successes and also flag any areas where the GCC Task Force can offer more support.
Okay, so now that you have a little idea about, the reports, we're going to talk about the funding sources. So I'm going to go over our Title II formula grant, also known as juvenile justice grants. And the application again will open October 1st and close January 31st of 2026. Juvenile justice grants are on our calendar year, and so those grants will begin January 1st, 2027 to December 31st, 2028. When we look at our federal grant program, the Title II Formula Grant is designed to develop more effective education, training, research, prevention, diversion, treatment, and rehabilitation programs that support juvenile justice system improvement efforts. So we're looking at all of the different points of the juvenile justice system, and there really are an array of programs that you can apply to fund. We talked a little bit about our racial and ethnic disparities subcommittee earlier, but it's important to note that we do have a funding priority that is for the reduction of racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system. And so the RED subcommittee works to develop strategies to reduce minority overrepresentation, and they work to support programs by developing our contextualized funding priority. They review program performance and outputs, and truly look at the system as a whole to see where improvements can be made in the area of disparate outcomes for racial and ethnic subgroups. So to get into our application for Title II, all of our applications do have funding caps. And the funding cap for our discretionary priority is $100,000. All of the other juvenile justice priorities are $200,000. Juvenile justice grants do not have match. And so requests for funding must be reasonable and realistic. And if we're growing continuing projects, they have to include additional program activities. We do see a lot of the same subrecipients. So if there's anyone new out there, we just want to make sure that you are being reasonable in your funding request, because we don't want to return funds back to the federal government. So our funding priorities for Title II include counseling, training, and mentoring programs, educational programs or services for at-risk youth, positive youth development programs, racial and ethnic disparities, and again, a discretionary priority. So our counseling, training, and mentoring priority, again, has a funding cap of $200,000. So that's the maximum amount that you can apply for. And counseling, training, and mentoring programs should be programs that are in support of academic tutoring, vocational and technical training, and drug and violence prevention counseling that are designed to link at-risk juveniles with services and qualified professionals. I'll just leave that up just for a few minutes in case you want to read the full priority. Okay. Our next priority is educational programs and services for at-risk youth, again with a funding cap of $200,000. That's the maximum amount that can be applied for. Educational programs or supportive services for at-risk or delinquent youth and other juveniles. Essentially, the goal of these programs, as defined by OJJDP, is to encourage juveniles to remain in elementary and secondary schools or in alternative learning situations, including truancy programs, prevention and reduction programs, to provide services to assist juveniles in making the transition to the world of work and self-sufficiency, and to enhance the coordination with local schools that such juveniles would otherwise attend, to ensure that the instruction that juveniles receive outside of school is closely aligned with the instruction provided in school, and information regarding any learning problems identified in such an alternative learning situation is communicated to the schools. Positive youth development programs, again, have a maximum amount of $200,000. And these are programs for positive youth development that assist delinquent and other at-risk youth in obtaining a sense of safety and structure, belonging and membership, self-worth and social contribution, independence and control over one's life, and closeness in interpersonal relationships. All of the priorities under Title II are using the language from the federal government. And we do that because, again, there are a broad array of programs that you can fund under these very general funding priorities. Our discretionary priority has a maximum application amount of 100,000, and these are comprehensive juvenile justice and delinquency prevention programs that meet the needs of youth through the collaboration of many local systems before which a youth may appear. So these systems may include schools, courts, law enforcement agencies, child protection agencies, mental health agencies, welfare services, healthcare agencies, and private nonprofit agencies. So for our discretionary priority, it's really important that you have already defined some relationships, and with your application, you provide an MOU so that you can illustrate the collaboration that will occur during your grant period of performance. Racial and ethnic disparities has a funding cap of 200,000, and it is a federal requirement that we have to meet. So we fund programs, research, or other initiatives that address the disproportionate number of youth members of minority groups who come into contact with the juvenile justice system. We do also keep data, and we have posted a report on racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system. We have to collect this data and submit it to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention annually. And so if you have questions about the scope of RED or racial and ethnic disparities, you can contact our staff and we can provide resources. Applications under the RED priority should describe the youth population that they serve in terms of race and ethnicity, explain how their project aims to reduce disparities and/or promote racial equity for youth in their communities, most notably those at risk for juvenile justice system involvement, and it should describe the program's potential impact on youth outcomes by race and ethnicity. As I shared at the beginning of the Title II portion, there is not a match for Title II juvenile justice programs, and applicants should only submit one application per priority. So though you can submit more than one application, you can only submit one under each funding priority, so long as it meets the definition. The transportation of youth participants is a participant support cost. And though certain costs we no longer have to get federal approval for, you still should get prior written approval from the GCC in order to transport youth. So if you have additional questions about that, please contact us. We do have a form for that has to be reviewed ahead of any awarding and any activities that may involve transporting youth participants.
Thank you.
And
So now,
we'll go to CJA. Sorry, Tony. Go
that's
ahead.
okay. So as you can see here, the application window runs from December 1st through January 31st, and the grant period or period of performance is from October 1st to September 30th. So that gives you a little time to get all of your materials together. So the CJA task force is multidisciplinary, meaning it's made up of professionals from across systems, law enforcement, child welfare, prosecution, courts, medical, and advocacy fields. Basically, people who know both the criminal justice and child protection systems inside and out. And their role is to look at how the system responds to child physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse and exploitation, and child maltreatment fatalities, and identify where improvements are needed. So these funds are designed to improve how we assess, investigate, and prosecute cases of child abuse and neglect, and do it in ways that minimize further trauma for child and family. And they also support work around fatality reviews and cases involving children with disabilities or complex health needs. So for this year's awards, it will be a one-year project period running October 26th to September 27th. The maximum request is 109,477, and applications will be accepted under all three federal focus areas, priority A, B, and C, but this year's emphasis will be on priority B. And also projects should align with the state task force recommendations across all three federally required priority areas. So again, priority B, this year's focus is about innovation. That's testing new or model approaches to improve how child abuse and neglect cases move through the courts. And that could mean improving judicial efficiency, supporting guardians ad litem, or using technology to streamline court processes. And the task force goal is to support projects that enhance the judicial handling, multidisciplinary coordination, or use of technologies in these cases. And priority C, oh, sorry. So priority A, this one focuses on how the cases are handled, investigative, administrative, and judicial, especially when there are multiple jurisdictions, like state, tribal, or interstate cases. It's also about reducing trauma for children and families and ensuring fairness at every level. And the task force goal here is to transform how children and families experience the court system through trauma-informed and culturally responsive approaches. So priority C is about system reform, updating laws, policies, and procedures to ensure North Carolina provides comprehensive protection for children while maintaining fairness. And the task force goal here is to support legislative and policy efforts that clarify responsibilities and improve collaboration in child abuse and neglect cases. Now, here's what CJA cannot fund, and this one is important. CJA doesn't fund direct services and primary prevention programs, so things like individual therapy, counseling, or general prevention campaigns. Those activities would fall under the funding sources like Title II, VOCA, or VAWA. So each agency can submit only one application, and there's no match requirement, as Adonica had mentioned earlier. And also, we ask that you keep the budgets realistic. Very large or inflated requests are unlikely to be considered.
So we're going to go over some other important information. The Crime Victim Services team also had a version of this that they went over, but we have a crosswalk to help you identify what our funding priorities are. And that's just with the transition to EBS. It looks a little different for people who have applied previously in our GEM system. So hopefully this guide is helpful. It'll also be printed in the RFA where we outline each of these priorities as well. But the priorities appear like this. And so again, you'll see a definition and all of the information within our request for applications once released. I believe that we've touched on this previously, especially when we went over the calendar, but here are some key dates that are coming up. The application opens December 1st and closes January 31st. The vote for the approval of applications occurs in June by the commission. And then we have our grant award workshops in the fall of 2026. Our new awards should start October 1st. And for juvenile justice grants, they begin January 1st. So again, I know it seems a little off because we're on a calendar year, but in this application cycle, these are for juvenile justice grants that begin January 1st, 2027. And that is all from the juvenile justice team. If you have any questions, you can contact any of us, me, Tony, or Wayne. We are available to answer any questions that you may have about the funding sources or the priorities, or maybe a programmatic question that you have about your proposal. Wayne, do we have any questions in the chat?
We do have one question from Joanna that she asks, what if the program for which we request funding could fit under two priorities? Either, for example, positive youth development and racial and ethnic disparities. Are we able to call out both, or should that be handled? Or how should that be handled? Sorry. I'm assuming we wouldn't submit the same application under each priority. So
Right. It would have to be a different grant application. So we leave it to you to determine which would be the best fit. If you have a question about perhaps which the best fit for your application is, you can contact us. They are scored in terms of which priority they fall under. but sometimes the priorities do change. If once submitted, the committee may feel like it fits under a better priority as well. So if you have, you know, one program or one application, you only need to submit one application and not maybe a copy of that and all of the priorities, if that makes sense. Are there any other questions?
I think that's
Okay,
it. So we're
well,
good.
yeah, thank you. We thank you for your time and we look forward to working with you going forward.
All right. Thank you guys.